My name is Grover James Carter, 35 years old, and until last Christmas, I was the family doormat. We had all explicitly agreed multiple times to a no-gifts holiday due to financial hardships. Yet there I stood watching my brother Mitchell's kids unwrap brand new iPhones and designer clothes, while my children clutched their homemade cards. "You're overreacting," my dad smirked when I mentioned our agreement. I just nodded, gathered my heartbroken kids, and left quietly. That night I made a decision that would shake my entire family to its core. Before I dive into what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up, because this family showdown was just beginning. Growing up in suburban Detroit, Michigan, the dynamic between my older brother Mitchell and me was set early. He was the golden child, the athletic one, the charming one, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I was just Grover, the quieter, thoughtful kid who was good with computers but never quite measured up to Mitchell's accomplishments. My parents, Margaret and Harold Carter, never tried to hide their preference. When Mitchell got a B on his report card, we celebrated with ice cream. When I got straight, as it was expected. This pattern continued into adulthood. Mitchell went into investment banking, married Stephanie, a former pageant competitor with expensive taste, and had 2 kids, Aiden, now 12, and Zoe, 11. I took a more modest path in IT consulting, married my college sweetheart Diane, and had 2 amazing children, Emma, 10, and Liam, 8. 2 years ago, Diane left me for her gym trainer. The divorce hit me hard, both emotionally and financially. Child support and alimony took a significant chunk of my income, and I downsized from our suburban home to a 3-bedroom apartment closer to my office. Through it all, my kids remained my priority. Emma with her soulful eyes and passion for reading and art. Liam with his energetic personality and love for any sport involving a ball. They were my world, and I worked hard to ensure they never felt the impact of our reduced circumstances. This past year brought another challenge. The tech company I worked for announced layoffs due to market downturns. While I kept my job, my hours were cut by 20% along with my salary. With Christmas approaching, I was feeling the pinch, especially knowing how much Emma wanted a new art set and how Liam had been hoping for a gaming console his friends had. At our family Thanksgiving dinner, I hesitantly brought up my financial situation. To my surprise, everyone seemed understanding. My mother, sipping her 3rd glass of wine, was the one who suggested it first. "Why don't we do a no-gifts Christmas this year?" she proposed. "With the economy the way it is, we could all use a break from the commercialism. Let's just enjoy being together." Mitchell, who was usually quick to showcase his wealth, surprisingly agreed. "Actually, that's not a bad idea. We've been talking about teaching the kids about what really matters during the holidays." His wife Stephanie nodded in apparent agreement, though I caught a glance between them that I couldn't quite interpret. "So we're all clear," I confirmed. "No gifts this Christmas. Just family time." "Absolutely," my father Harold affirmed. "No gifts, period." We discussed it further, even specifying that small homemade gifts for the kids would be acceptable but nothing purchased. My mother repeated the no-gifts policy twice more before dinner ended. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, I worked with Emma and Liam to create thoughtful homemade presents for their grandparents, uncle, aunt, and cousins. Emma painted beautiful watercolor bookmarks for everyone, personalized with their initials and favorite colors. Liam and I built simple wooden photo frames which we filled with family photos. We spent evenings working on these projects, and my children poured their hearts into them. Emma was particularly proud of the bookmark she made for my mother, incorporating the lavender color Margaret always wore. "Do you think Grandma will like it?" Dad Emma asked carefully, adding the final touches. "She's going to love it," I assured her, ignoring the knot in my stomach that formed whenever I remembered past disappointments. I'd seen this pattern before. When I was 14, my parents promised both Mitchell and me new bikes if we improved our grades. I worked tirelessly, raising my B- average to all As. Mitchell managed to pull his D in English to a C-. On the day we showed our report cards, Mitchell received a top-of-the-line mountain bike. I got a used bike from a garage sale that needed significant repairs. When I pointed out the discrepancy, my mother said Mitchell needed more encouragement than you. Despite these memories, I wanted to believe this time would be different. My friend Alice Fuller, a single mother to 9-year-old Jackson, cautioned me when I told her about the agreement. "Your family doesn't exactly have the best track record with fairness, Grover," she said over coffee one afternoon. "Are you sure they'll stick to it?" Alice had become a close friend since our kids attended the same school. She saw my worth in a way my family never had, and her perspective was always refreshingly honest. They promised, I said multiple times. Even Mitchell and Stephanie agreed. And honestly, they need to understand what it's like for most people right now. Alice gave me a sympathetic smile that suggested she wasn't convinced, but she changed the subject to our kids' upcoming school play. As Christmas Eve approached, Emma and Liam were genuinely excited. Despite their modest surroundings compared to their cousins, they never complained. They were looking forward to the family gathering, the traditional Carter family Christmas Eve dinner, and watching holiday movies afterward. I was determined to make it special for them, no gifts policy or not. "Dad, can we make cookies for everyone too?" Liam asked the day before Christmas Eve. "Absolutely, buddy. What kind should we make?" "Chocolate chip for me and Zoe, sugar cookies for Aiden, and those fancy ones with the jam that Grandma likes." His thoughtfulness touched me. Despite often being overshadowed by their cousins, my kids still thought about what would make others happy. The night before Christmas Eve, we baked cookies, packed our homemade gifts, and talked about what we were looking forward to the next day. Neither Emma nor Liam mentioned store-bought presents. They had accepted and embraced the no-gifts Christmas concept completely. "Tomorrow is going to be great," I told them as I tucked them in. "Remember, Christmas is about being together, not about what we get." "I know, Dad," Emma said, yawning. "I just want to see everyone." If only I had known what we were walking into. Christmas Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow that made everything look like a holiday card. Emma and Liam were up early, helping me pack the cookies and presents into the car. Emma wore the red sweater dress she had saved for special occasions, while Liam sported a green button-up shirt that he normally protested wearing. They wanted to look nice, and their excitement was contagious. "Do you think Uncle Mitchell will play chess with me this year?" Liam asked as we drove toward my parents' Tudor-style home in the affluent Woodward Estates neighborhood. Mitchell had promised to teach him last year, but had spent most of the time on his phone instead. "I hope so, buddy. If not, maybe we can play together," I replied, already preparing him for potential disappointment. When we pulled into my parents' circular driveway, I noticed several expensive cars already parked there. Mitchell's new Tesla, my father's Lincoln, and a Range Rover I didn't recognize. Nothing unusual there except perhaps the Range Rover. What caught my attention, however, was the elaborate holiday display that had transformed the front yard since Thanksgiving. New professional lighting outlined the house, and at least 3 inflatable holiday decorations that hadn't been there during our last visit dominated the lawn. So much for cutting back this year. My mother greeted us at the door in a brand new red cashmere sweater with what looked like real diamond earrings glittering beneath her perfectly coiffed silver hair. "Merry Christmas, dears. Come in, come in. Everyone's in the living room." Emma and Liam gave their grandmother quick hugs before rushing off to find their cousins. I followed more slowly, carrying our plate of homemade cookies and bag of crafted gifts. As I turned the corner into the living room, I stopped dead in my tracks. The room had been transformed into what looked like a department store display. A 12-foot tree dominated one corner, surrounded by what must have been at least 30 wrapped packages, large professionally wrapped boxes, with elaborate bows and expensive-looking gift tags. The mantel was lined with stuffed stockings, and more presents were arranged on the antique coffee table. My father looked up from his recliner and raised his whiskey glass in greeting. Mitchell and Stephanie sat on the leather sectional, both wearing matching cream-colored cashmere sweaters that looked fresh from the store. Their children, Aiden and Zoe, were on the floor near the tree, already examining tags on presents. "Uncle Grover's here," Zoe announced, barely looking up from a large silver-wrapped box she was shaking gently. My children stood frozen just inside the doorway, their expressions changing from excitement to confusion as they took in the scene. Liam looked back at me, his eyebrows drawn together in question. I had no answers for him. "What's all this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, despite the sinking feeling in my stomach. "Oh, just a few things to make the holiday special," my mother replied breezily, taking the cookie plate from my hands and placing it on a side table without comment. "But I thought we agreed I started." "Presents time," my father interrupted, clapping his hands. "Kids gather round." Mitchell's children needed no encouragement, immediately positioning themselves by the largest gifts. My kids remained standing awkwardly by my side, still holding their handmade presents. "Aiden, you first," my mother directed, handing him a large rectangular box wrapped in metallic blue paper. What followed was like watching a slow-motion car crash that I was powerless to stop. Aiden tore into the package to reveal the latest iPhone Pro, complete with accessories and AppleCare. "Awesome, thanks Grandma and Grandpa," he exclaimed, immediately starting to open the box. Zoe went next, unwrapping an identical iPhone in rose gold, squealing with delight. Then came more presents, designer clothes from brands I couldn't afford to even window shop at, the latest gaming headsets, and an electric scooter for each of Mitchell's kids. Emma's grip on her watercolor bookmarks tightened until the paper began to crease. Liam's lower lip trembled slightly, but he was trying to maintain a brave face. I placed my hands protectively on their shoulders. The grand finale was Mitchell presenting his children with their big gifts from him and Stephanie. For Aiden, a gaming PC that I later learned cost $3,500. For Zoe, VIP concert tickets to see her favorite pop star, including backstage passes and a hotel stay in Chicago. Throughout this obscene display, not a single gift appeared for my children. They stood watching, their initial confusion now settled into a quiet hurt that broke my heart. Emma's eyes had grown increasingly watery, while Liam had retreated into silence, his shoulders slumped. When the unwrapping frenzy finally subsided, the stark contrast was unbearable. Mitchell's children surrounded by piles of expensive electronics and clothing, while mine clutched their handmade gifts that now seemed painfully inadequate in comparison. "We brought some gifts, too," Emma said quietly, her voice small but determined. She stepped forward and held out her carefully made bookmarks. "I made these for everyone." There was an awkward pause before my mother took them, giving them a cursory glance. "How creative," she said, setting them aside without distributing them to the others. "Liam, what do you have there?" Liam, seeing Emma's gift so quickly dismissed, clutched his photo frames closer to his chest. "Just some frames I made," he mumbled. "I'm sure they're lovely," Stephanie said in her saccharine voice. "The kids have so many gifts to open still, maybe save them for later." That was when I found my voice. "Mom, what happened to our agreement? We all said no gifts this Christmas. We specifically discussed this multiple times." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Grover, don't be so literal. We couldn't have nothing for the children to open on Christmas. That would be depressing. But we agreed." "You're overreacting," my father interrupted with a smirk. "The kids are happy, aren't they?" He gestured to Mitchell's children, who were already absorbed in their new devices, completely ignoring my kids. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Look, bro, maybe you should manage your money better if you're that worried about gifts. I can recommend some investment strategies that might help your situation." The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. "That's not the point," I said, my voice tight. "We made an agreement as a family, and you all broke it without even telling me. Do you have any idea how this makes my kids feel?" Stephanie jumped in with fake sympathy. "Oh, we didn't mean to upset anyone. The children don't mind, do you, dears?" She looked at Emma and Liam with a plastic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You understand that your daddy's situation is just a bit different right now. Maybe next year he can get you nice things too." I saw the tears finally spill over Emma's eyelashes, though she tried to wipe them away quickly. Liam had gone completely still beside me, a coping mechanism he'd developed during the worst parts of the divorce. "We made the no-gifts agreement specifically because of financial disparities," I said, struggling to keep my voice even, "so that no one would feel left out or less than. That was the entire point." "Well, we couldn't just not give our grandchildren presents," my mother huffed. "What kind of grandparents would that make us?" The unspoken addition hung in the air. She had no problem not giving my children presents. I looked around the room. My father still wore that infuriating smirk, watching the scene as if it were an amusing TV show. Mitchell had the audacity to look annoyed, as if my objection was ruining his perfect family Christmas. Stephanie was already taking photos of her children with their gifts, probably for her extensive social media following, and my mother stood defiant, completely unwilling to acknowledge what she had done. My children's faces were what decided me. Emma's quiet tears and brave attempt to hold them back. Liam's pale, stoic expression that couldn't quite hide the hurt in his eyes. They had been excited about this day, about the family time, about giving their handmade gifts. Instead, they were being taught a brutal lesson about where they stood in their grandparents' hearts. "I think we should go," I said quietly. "Don't be ridiculous," my mother replied. "Dinner's almost ready. The kids haven't even had any cookies yet." I looked at Emma and Liam. "Do you want to stay?" They both gave small, synchronized shakes of their heads. "We're leaving," I announced more firmly this time. I helped my kids into their coats, gathered their untouched gifts, and headed for the door. "You're being dramatic," Mitchell called after me. "It's Christmas Eve, for God's sake." "Exactly," I replied without turning around. "Merry Christmas." As we walked to the car, I heard my mother call from the doorway. "You'll regret walking out like this, Grover. Think of the children." I was thinking of my children. That was the only thing on my mind. The ride home was eerily quiet. In the rearview mirror, I could see Emma silently crying, tears streaming down her face as she stared out the window. Liam sat completely still, his small hands folded in his lap, his homemade photo frames clutched tightly. "I'm sorry," I finally said, breaking the silence. "That wasn't right, what happened back there. Why doesn't Grandma love us as much?" Liam's question was so direct, so heartbreakingly honest, that I nearly had to pull the car over. "It's not about love, buddy," I lied, trying to protect him from a truth that was too harsh for his 8-year-old heart. "Yes, it is," Emma contradicted, wiping her eyes. "Grandma and Grandpa love Aiden and Zoe more. They always have." I couldn't argue. The evidence was too overwhelming, and my children weren't babies anymore. They could see the truth for themselves. "I tried so hard on those bookmarks," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "I used Grandma's favorite color and everything. And I wanted to give Uncle Mitchell the frame with the picture of us fishing last summer," Liam added. "I thought he'd like it." Their heartbreak was palpable, and it brought back a flood of memories from my own childhood. The time Mitchell received a new bicycle, while I got a used one. The trip to Disney World when Mitchell got to bring a friend and I had to stay with our elderly neighbor. Countless birthdays and Christmases, when the disparity in gifts was obvious but never acknowledged. I'd spent decades making excuses for my parents' behavior. They don't mean it. They just don't realize how it comes across. Mitchell needs more because he's more outgoing. I've always been more independent. But now, seeing my children suffer the same treatment, something inside me finally snapped. When we got home, I made hot chocolate and put on their favorite holiday movie. They curled up together on the couch, subdued but gradually relaxing as the familiar story unfolded. I sat with them, my arm around Emma's shoulders, Liam leaning against my side. "Dad," Emma said after a while. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for taking us home. I didn't want to stay there." "Me neither," Liam added. "You don't ever have to stay somewhere that makes you feel bad," I told them firmly. "Not even if it's family. Especially if it's family." After they went to bed, I sat in the darkened living room thinking. My phone had been buzzing periodically with texts from my mother demanding to know why we'd left, insisting we return for Christmas Day tomorrow. I hadn't answered any of them. Instead, I started making a list. A comprehensive inventory of all the ways I financially supported my parents and Mitchell's family. Things they had come to take for granted over the years, small and large contributions that had become invisible to them. The family cell phone plan I'd set up and maintained for years, leveraging my IT company discount. My parents, Mitchell, Stephanie, and their kids all had lines on it. I paid the bill every month. The streaming services, Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO Max, all under my accounts, all paid for by me. My parents and Mitchell's family used them constantly but had never once offered to contribute. The joint credit card I maintained for family emergencies, which increasingly included my mother's impulse purchases and Mitchell's convenient forgetfulness when dinner checks arrived. The vacation timeshare I had inherited from my grandparents that my whole family used freely while I covered the annual maintenance fees. The premium sports package I subscribed to mainly because my father and Mitchell wanted to watch certain games. The lawn service and snow removal service I had arranged and paid for at my parents' house after my father's minor heart scare 3 years ago. The list went on growing longer as I remembered more and more instances of financial support I provided that had gone unacknowledged and unappreciated. All while they broke a simple promise that would have spared my children the pain of feeling less valued than their cousins. A new understanding washed over me. This wasn't just about Christmas gifts. This was about a lifetime of being taken advantage of being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who would always be there to pick up the slack while receiving nothing but criticism and condescension in return. And now they were doing the same thing to my children. I opened my laptop and began systematically canceling or modifying every shared service. First, the streaming services. I changed all the passwords and removed the extra profiles. Netflix done, Disney Plus done, Amazon Prime done. One by one, I reclaimed what was mine. Next, I logged into my cell phone carrier account and removed every line except mine and my kids. I transferred my parents' and Mitchell's family's numbers to separate accounts, which would force them to set up their own payment methods within 48 hours or lose service. I called the credit card company and reported the joint family card as compromised, requesting an immediate freeze and a new card to be issued only in my name. I contacted the timeshare management company and removed everyone's access except mine, leaving a note that any future use by extended family would require my explicit approval and a daily usage fee. I canceled the sports package entirely. I rarely watched it anyway. I called the lawn service and snow removal company explaining that I would no longer be paying for services at my parents' address effective immediately. With each cancellation, each reclamation of what was rightfully mine, I felt a weight lifting. Years of resentment, of swallowing my feelings for the sake of family peace, of putting everyone else before myself and my children, it all began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of liberation. At 1:30 in the morning, after 3 hours of methodical financial disentanglement, I drafted a simple email to my parents and Mitchell. After tonight's clear demonstration of where my children stand in this family's hierarchy, I've decided to reevaluate my financial contributions to our shared expenses. I've canceled all services and subscriptions that I've been providing. This isn't done out of anger, but out of a necessary realignment of priorities and boundaries. My primary responsibility is to Emma and Liam, who deserve to be treated with the same love and consideration as their cousins. When you're ready to acknowledge the hurt caused and discuss a more equitable family dynamic, I'm willing to talk. Until then, I wish you all well. Grover. I read it twice, edited out a few more emotional phrases, then hit send. Then I turned off my phone, completely crawled into bed, and slept more soundly than I had in years. When I woke up the next morning, Christmas Day, I made coffee before turning my phone back on. I wanted to be fully caffeinated for whatever awaited me. The screen lit up and began buzzing continuously as notifications poured in. 69 missed calls, 27 voicemails, 43 text messages, 8 emails, all from my parents and Mitchell. I skimmed through the texts, first watching the progression of emotions from my family members. From Mom, 7:30 a.m. Grover. What's wrong with Netflix? Are you having internet problems? From Mom, 7:45 a.m. The cell phones aren't working either. Call me when you get this. From Mitchell, 8 a.m. Dude, what's going on with the Prime account? Aiden was trying to download a game. From Dad, 8:15 a.m. Your mother is upset about the TV. Fix it. As the morning progressed, the messages became more frantic, then angry, then threatening. From Mom, 9:30 a.m. What have you done? Call me immediately. From Mitchell, 10 a.m. Are you seriously throwing a tantrum over Christmas gifts? Grow up and fix this. Now. From Stephanie, 10:30 a.m. Your behavior is disturbing and concerning, Grover. The children are upset about their shows. From Dad, 11 a.m. This is completely unacceptable. Your mother is in tears. Turn everything back on now. The most recent messages had taken on an ominous tone. From Mitchell, 12:30 p.m. If you don't respond in the next hour, we're coming over. This is insane. From Mom, 12:45 p.m. We're worried about your mental state. If we don't hear from you soon, we'll have to take measures. I deleted all the voicemails without listening to them. I didn't need to hear the escalating anger and manipulative concern in their voices. The texts told me everything I needed to know. I made pancakes shaped like Christmas trees for Emma and Liam. We opened the few presents I had managed to get them. Nothing extravagant, but thoughtful things I knew they would appreciate. For Emma, a set of professional-grade watercolors and a sketchbook. For Liam, a basketball and a board game he had mentioned wanting. They seemed genuinely happy with their gifts, especially in the peaceful atmosphere of our apartment. "Are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's today?" Liam asked as we cleaned up the wrapping paper. "Not today, buddy. I thought we'd do something different, just the three of us. How about we go to that indoor water park you've been wanting to try?" Their faces lit up. The water park was a splurge I'd been saving for, but today felt like the right occasion to use those funds. We needed some joy and normalcy after yesterday's disaster. We spent hours swimming, sliding, and laughing. For a while it was possible to forget the family drama entirely and just enjoy being together. I watched my children play their faces alight with happiness and knew I had made the right decision in walking out yesterday. When we returned home in the late afternoon, there were 3 cars parked in front of our apartment building that made my heart sink: my father's Lincoln Mitchell's Tesla and my mother's Lexus. They had come just as they had threatened. "Stay in the car a minute," I told the kids, pulling into a spot far from the entrance. Before I could decide on a plan, my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, came hurrying over. "Grover, thank goodness you're back. Your family has been causing quite a scene. They were banging on your door and yelling. Several neighbors complained, and they've been circling the parking lot looking for your car." "I'm sorry about that," I said, mortified. "Don't be sorry, dear. Just be careful." They seemed very upset. "Oh, and the police were here about 20 minutes ago. A wellness check," they said. My stomach dropped. "The police?" Mrs. Patel nodded gravely. 2 officers, very polite. They said someone had called concerned about your mental health. I thanked her for the information and turned to my children. "Change of plans, guys. We're going to go visit Miss Alice and Jackson for a bit, okay?" They nodded clearly, sensing the tension despite my efforts to appear calm. I texted Alice as we pulled out of the parking lot. Family drama explosion. "Can we come over for a bit?" Her reply was immediate. "Doors open. Wine's ready." Alice's cozy 2-bedroom house was a sanctuary. While our kids played video games in Jackson's room, I explained the whole situation to her at her kitchen table. "They called the police for a wellness check," she repeated incredulously. "Because you canceled some subscriptions. That's insane." "I think it was Mitchell's idea," I said. "He's always been dramatic and he hates not getting his way." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I can't avoid going home forever." Alice squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing, Grover. They've been taking advantage of you for years, and what they did to Emma and Liam was cruel." Her support meant everything. Alice had never met my family, but she had heard enough stories over our coffee meetups to understand the dynamics at play. Around 7 p.m. I decided it was time to face the music. We thanked Alice and headed back to our apartment. To my relief, the family cars were gone, but as we approached our door, I saw 2 police officers standing in the hallway. "Mr. Carter?" the older officer asked. His nameplate read Morales. "Yes, that's me," I confirmed, instinctively moving to stand slightly in front of my children. "I'm Officer Morales, and this is Officer Bryant. We received another call for a welfare check at this address. Your brother seems very concerned about your mental health." I sighed deeply. "I'm fine. My family is upset because I canceled some shared subscriptions and services that I was paying for. It's a family disagreement, not a mental health crisis." Officer Bryant, younger, and with a more sympathetic expression, glanced at Emma and Liam. "These are your children." "Yes, my daughter Emma and my son Liam." "Hi there," she said, smiling at them. "Are you having a good Christmas?" They nodded cautiously. "We went to a water park," Liam volunteered. "That sounds fun," Officer Bryant replied. Much better than sitting around with angry adults, I bet. I appreciated her understanding of the situation. "Mr. Carter, can we speak privately for a moment?" Officer Morales asked. I asked the kids to wait inside the apartment while I stepped back into the hallway with the officers. "Your brother made some concerning claims," Officer Morales said once the door closed. "He suggested you might be having a breakdown, mentioned a recent divorce, financial issues, and erratic behavior." "My divorce was 2 years ago," I explained calmly. "Yes, I have some financial challenges, who doesn't these days? As for erratic behavior, I simply stopped allowing my family to take financial advantage of me after they deliberately hurt my children yesterday." I gave them a brief, factual account of the Christmas Eve incident and my subsequent actions. Officer Morales nodded thoughtfully. "Family conflicts often escalate during the holidays. We're required to follow up on welfare check calls, but I can see you're not in crisis. Your brother seems to be using police resources to pressure you." Officer Bryant added, her tone professional, but with an undercurrent of disapproval. "That's not what emergency services are for." "I apologize for my family wasting your time," I said, sincerely. "No need to apologize, Mr. Carter. But you might want to be clear with your family that continued misuse of police resources could result in consequences for them, not you." They gave me a card with a case number and suggested documenting any further harassment. After they left, I found Emma and Liam sitting quietly on the couch, clearly unsettled by the police presence. "Everything's okay," I assured them. "Uncle Mitchell is just upset about some grown-up stuff. The police officers were very nice, weren't they?" They nodded, but Emma looked troubled. "Why is everyone so mad at us, Dad?" "They're not mad at you, sweetie. They're mad at me because I made some changes they don't like. But it's going to be okay." "Are we in trouble?" Liam asked in a small voice. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "You haven't done anything wrong, and neither have I. Sometimes families disagree, and right now that's what's happening. But my job is to take care of you two, and that's exactly what I'm doing." That seemed to reassure them enough to move on to our traditional Christmas night movie marathon. As they settled in with popcorn and hot chocolate, I quickly checked my phone. More texts had arrived, more threats, more guilt trips. I blocked my parents' and Mitchell's numbers, then turned my attention back to my children. They deserved a peaceful end to Christmas Day, and I was determined to give them that much. As Emma and Liam laughed at the holiday comedy on screen, I made a mental note to call a locksmith in the morning. Something told me this family war was just beginning. The week after Christmas was unlike anything I had ever experienced with my family. Without the ability to call or text me directly, they escalated to other tactics. On December 26th, I returned to work after the holiday break to find an urgent message from my boss, Nancy Kim, asking me to come to her office immediately. "Grover," she said as I took a seat, her expression serious. "I received a concerning call from your brother this morning. He claimed you're experiencing severe mental health issues that might impact your work performance. He suggested we should reconsider your position for your own well-being." My stomach dropped. "He what?" Nancy held up a hand. "Don't worry. I've worked with you for 7 years. I know a vindictive family member when I hear one, but I thought you should know what you're dealing with." I thanked her profusely for her trust and briefly explained the situation. "Take care of yourself," she advised, "and document everything. This kind of behavior could cross into harassment territory." The next day I received a call from Emma and Liam's school while in a client meeting. The secretary sounded flustered. "Mr. Carter, your parents are here insisting on picking up Emma and Liam. They say it's a family emergency, but they're not on the approved pickup list. They're becoming quite agitated." I excused myself from the meeting and rushed to the school. By the time I arrived, the principal had moved my parents to her office to avoid creating a scene in the front lobby. My mother was tearfully claiming they needed to see their grandchildren, while my father demanded to know why they weren't authorized to pick them up. "Because you're not," I said firmly from the doorway, "and there is no family emergency." "Grover," my mother cried, "how could you block our numbers? We've been worried sick." "No, you've been angry that I stopped providing free services," I corrected her. "And now you're trying to manipulate me by involving my workplace and my children's school." "This is ridiculous," my father snapped. You're acting like a child over a few Christmas presents. The principal, Dr. Richardson, a competent woman who had always been supportive of my single-parent challenges, interrupted smoothly. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I'm afraid I must ask you to leave school property. Only authorized individuals can pick up students, and creating a disturbance on campus is against our policies. They left reluctantly, my mother in tears, my father muttering about ungrateful children. I stayed to explain the situation to Dr. Richardson and ensure that security was aware my parents and Mitchell's family were not permitted to pick up my children under any circumstances. By Thursday, the battle had moved to social media. Stephanie, with her substantial following of fellow suburban influencers, began posting cryptic messages about family members with mental health challenges and praying for those who let bitterness consume them. She never mentioned me by name, but her audience knew exactly who she was referring to. Friends and acquaintances began messaging me, asking if everything was okay. Some were genuinely concerned. Others were clearly fishing for gossip. I maintained a dignified silence online, but documented every post from my growing file of harassment evidence. On Friday, I received a formal-looking letter from a lawyer claiming to represent Mitchell regarding the illegal withholding of shared family property, specifically the vacation timeshare. The letter demanded I restore access immediately or face legal consequences. A quick consultation with my own lawyer friend confirmed what I suspected: the timeshare was solely in my name, inherited directly from my grandparents, and I had every legal right to control access. The weekend brought a ray of hope in the form of an unexpected ally. My father's brother, Uncle Carl, called from Arizona. "Grover, it's your Uncle Carl. Don't hang up, I'm not calling to pressure you. I heard what happened from your dad, but I want your side of the story." I hadn't spoken to Uncle Carl in years, but I had always liked him. He was the black sheep of the Carter family, having chosen to become a high school teacher rather than entering the family insurance business. I told him everything, not holding back, about the years of favoritism and the Christmas disaster. "I believe you," he said when I finished. "Your father and Mitchell have always had a blind spot when it comes to how they treat others, and your mother enables it. It was the same when we were kids. Your dad was the golden child, and I was the one who could never measure up." His validation was powerfully healing. For the first time, I didn't feel crazy or overly sensitive. Someone else in the family saw the pattern too. "They're telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown," Carl continued. "I knew that didn't sound like you. You've always been the steady one, even as a kid." "They called the police to my apartment, Uncle Carl. Twice." He sighed heavily. "That sounds like Mitchell's doing. He always goes nuclear when he doesn't get his way. Listen, I'm behind you 100%. If you need someone to back you up with the extended family, I'm your man." His support meant more than he could know. Throughout this escalating family war, Alice was my steadfast ally. She came over with home-cooked meals, offered to watch Emma and Liam when I needed a break, and provided a listening ear without judgment. Our friendship was deepening through this crisis, evolving into something that felt like it might eventually become more. "Your family is trying every manipulative tactic in the book," she observed one evening as we shared takeout after the kids had gone to bed. "First guilt, then anger, then public shaming, then legal threats. What's next? Exorcism?" I laughed. "Despite everything, don't give them ideas." On Monday morning of the new year, I received an email that changed the direction of the conflict. It was from Erica Wilson, Mitchell's high school girlfriend, who had married his former best friend, Ted. Erica and I had always gotten along well, even after she and Mitchell broke up. Her email was brief but explosive. "Grover, I heard about the Christmas blow-up from Ted's cousin who works with your dad. For what it's worth, I think you're right to stand your ground. Also, you should know that Mitchell and Stephanie aren't as financially secure as they pretend. Ted works in commercial banking and heard through industry gossip that Mitchell's investment firm is struggling. The show they put on is just that, a show. The fancy cars are leased and they're mortgaged to the hilt. Just thought you should know what you're dealing with. Stay strong, Erica." This information cast everything in a new light. Mitchell's ostentatious gift-giving despite our agreement, his aggressive reaction to losing access to services I paid for, his desperate attempts to make me look unstable, all pointed to someone trying to maintain an illusion of wealth, while financially drowning. The next day, I received a surprising call from my grandparents, who lived in Florida and typically stayed out of family conflicts. "Grover," my grandmother began hesitantly, "we've been hearing some concerning things about a falling out between you, your parents, and Mitchell. Your mother says you're not well, but that doesn't sound like you at all." I took a deep breath and explained everything: the no gifts agreement, the ambush of presents for Mitchell's children, the hurt on Emma and Liam's faces, my decision to cut financial ties, and the subsequent harassment. There was a long silence before my grandfather spoke. "We're calling a family meeting this Saturday. Everyone will attend, including the children." "Grandpa, I don't think. This has gone on long enough," he said with the quiet authority that had always commanded respect in our family. "You'll all sit down together and sort this out like adults, for the sake of all the children involved." I agreed reluctantly, but only after setting conditions: neutral location, Uncle Carl's presence, and a guarantee that there would be no ambushes or attempts to paint me as mentally unstable. Saturday arrived with a sense of impending reckoning. The meeting was set for 11 a.m. at my grandparents' winter condo in a nearby retirement community, neutral territory. Alice offered to keep Emma and Liam for the initial discussion, bringing them over later if things remained civil. When I arrived, my parents, Mitchell and Stephanie, Uncle Carl, and my grandparents were already seated in the living room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Thank you all for coming," my grandfather began. "We're here to resolve a serious family conflict that has gotten out of hand. Grover has agreed to speak first without interruption." All eyes turned to me. The moment of truth had arrived. I had prepared extensively for this meeting, bringing financial records, screenshots, and a calm, reasoned approach. Despite the angry glares from Mitchell and the tearful manipulation already starting from my mother, I was determined to remain factual and composed. "Thank you for arranging this, Grandpa and Grandma," I began. "I want to clarify what actually happened and why I took the actions I did." I methodically laid out the facts: the explicit no-gifts agreement made at Thanksgiving, confirmed multiple times, the shocking scene of expensive presents for Mitchell's children while mine stood empty-handed, the dismissive and gaslighting responses when I pointed out the broken promise, and finally my decision to stop financially supporting family members who showed such blatant disregard for my children's feelings. For years, I continued pulling out a folder of documents I've contributed financially to this family in ways that have gone completely unacknowledged. I presented a spreadsheet detailing every payment, every subscription, every service I had provided over the past 5 years, with the monthly and annual totals highlighted at the bottom. The numbers were substantial: over $20,000 in the last year alone. "I never asked for recognition or repayment," I said. "I helped because that's what family does. But family also keeps its promises. Family doesn't deliberately hurt children to maintain a hierarchy of favoritism." Mitchell scoffed loudly. "This is ridiculous. Are you seriously this upset about some Christmas presents? Grow up, Grover." "Mitchell, my grandfather warned you," agreed to let him speak without interruption. I continued addressing the harassment that followed my decision. After I canceled services I was paying for, which was entirely my right, you escalated to trying to get me fired, showing up at my children's school, spreading rumors about my mental health on social media, calling the police to my home, and threatening legal action, all because I stopped subsidizing your lifestyles. "That's a complete exaggeration," my father interjected. "We were concerned about your irrational behavior." "Irrational?" Uncle Carl spoke up from his corner. "Harold, he stopped paying for services you all took for granted. How is that irrational?" "Stay out of this, Carl," my father snapped. "This doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us," my grandfather said firmly. "This family is fracturing, and we need to address the real issues here." Stephanie, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stood up. "This is absurd. Mitchell works incredibly hard to provide for our family. We don't need Grover's charity. If he wants to be petty about Netflix and cell phones, that's his problem." "Then why the extreme reaction?" I asked calmly. "If these things don't matter, why call my boss? Why show up at my children's school? Why involve the police?" Mitchell's face flushed with anger. "Because you're behaving like a lunatic, cutting off contact, turning our parents against us. I did no such thing, I interrupted. I simply removed financial support that was being taken for granted while my children were being treated as less valuable than yours. The back and forth continued with accusations flying and tensions rising. My mother vacillated between tears and anger, while my father remained stubbornly defensive of Mitchell. Stephanie grew increasingly agitated as her attempts to paint me as unstable fell flat against my documented evidence. After nearly an hour of this, my grandmother suggested we take a break. As we dispersed for refreshments, I overheard Mitchell and Stephanie arguing in heated whispers in the hallway. "They're going to find out anyway," Mitchell hissed. "The bank's already called twice this week." "Keep your voice down," Stephanie responded. "No one needs to know our business." When we reconvened, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. My grandmother, who had been mostly silent until now, spoke up. "I think it's time we brought the children in. This affects them too, and maybe hearing from them directly will help us understand what's really important here." I texted Alice, who arrived 20 minutes later, with Emma, Liam, Aiden, and Zoe. The children sat awkwardly together on the couch, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the room. "Emma," my grandmother said gently, "can you tell us how you felt on Christmas Eve at your grandparents' house?" Emma looked at me uncertainly. I nodded encouragingly. "It was." She hesitated, then squared her small shoulders. "It was really sad. We worked really hard on our presents because we thought no one was buying gifts this year. I spent weeks on those bookmarks picking special colors for everyone. But then Aiden and Zoe got all those expensive things and no one even looked at what we made." Her honest words hung in the air. "Did it make you feel bad?" my grandmother prompted. Emma nodded, like we didn't matter as much. Like Grandma and Grandpa love Aiden and Zoe more than us. My mother gasped. "That's not true. We love all our grandchildren equally." "Then why did Aiden and Zoe get iPhones? And we got nothing?" Liam asked suddenly, his voice small but clear, even though we all promised no presents. The simple, direct question from an 8-year-old silenced the room. Aiden and Zoe looked uncomfortable, perhaps seeing the situation through new eyes. Zoe leaned over and whispered something to Aiden, who nodded. "We didn't know about the no presents promise," Zoe said. "Mom and Dad just said we were getting extra stuff this year." Uncle Carl, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "This isn't really about the presents, is it? It's about a pattern that's been going on for decades. I saw it when Harold and I were kids. He was always the favorite, always got more attention, more praise, more opportunities. Now the same thing is happening with Mitchell and Grover, and it's extending to the next generation." "That's absurd," my father protested. But his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Uncle Carl challenged. "Grover was just like me, quieter, more thoughtful, less demanding of attention. And just like me, he was overlooked, undervalued, and expected to go along with whatever the golden child wanted. The difference is, Grover has finally stood up for himself and his children." My grandmother's eyes filled with tears. "Carl, I never realized you felt that way growing up." "Because no one ever asked," he replied simply. A heavy silence fell over the room. For perhaps the first time, the long-standing family dynamic was being openly acknowledged, rather than denied or rationalized away. It was Mitchell who surprisingly broke first. "Fine. You want the truth. We're in trouble, okay? My firm lost 2 major clients last quarter. We're overextended. The cars, the vacations, the gifts, it's all on credit. We're barely keeping our heads above water." Stephanie looked mortified. "Mitchell, why would you tell them that?" "Because I'm tired, Steph. I'm tired of pretending everything's perfect when we're drowning in debt. I'm tired of competing with my brother when he doesn't even want to compete. I'm tired of trying to live up to what everyone expects from successful Mitchell." The confession stunned everyone, especially my parents. "But you always said business was booming," my father stammered. Mitchell laughed bitterly. "What was I supposed to say? That your golden boy is failing? That all those investment strategies I bragged about were falling apart? That we can barely make the mortgage payment on the house? You're so proud I bought." My mother turned to me, her expression confused and hurt. "Is that why you thought we didn't love your children as much? Because of the presents?" It wasn't just the presents, Mom, I said wearily. It was breaking a promise that was specifically made to prevent my kids from feeling less than. It was dismissing their feelings and mine when I pointed it out. It was years of Mitchell being the priority, his children being the priority, while mine were an afterthought. I never meant to make you feel that way, she said, tears streaming down her face. Mitchell always seemed to need more attention, more help. You were always so capable, so independent. Because I had to be, I replied quietly. Because I learned early on that asking for help or attention wasn't going to work for me the way it did for Mitchell. My father had gone very quiet, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was uncharacteristically subdued. I did the same thing my father did to Carl, he said, almost to himself. I never thought. I never wanted. You never meant to hurt anyone. Uncle Carl finished for him. But you did. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Years of unspoken resentments, misunderstandings, and dysfunctional patterns were brought into the light. Mitchell admitted to feeling crushing pressure to maintain an image of success that was destroying him financially and personally. Stephanie confessed to insecurity that drove her competitive behavior. My parents struggled to reconcile their self-image as good, loving parents and grandparents with the hurt they had caused. And I acknowledged my own role, how my silence and accommodation had enabled the pattern to continue, and how my resentment had built up over years instead of addressing issues as they arose. There were no easy resolutions, no magical healing of decades of dysfunction in one afternoon. But for perhaps the first time there was honesty, and with the children witnessing this difficult but necessary conversation, there was hope that the pattern might finally be broken. As the meeting wound down, Emma approached my mother and silently handed her the bookmark she had made lavender with my mother's initials carefully painted in silver. I made this for you, she said simply. My mother took it with trembling hands, finally seeing it, and Emma clearly. It's beautiful, she whispered. Thank you. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. 3 months after the Christmas confrontation, our family looked markedly different. The changes weren't instant or perfect, but they were significant and ongoing. My parents had begun seeing a family therapist, Dr. Rebecca Lane, both with me and on their own. The first sessions were tense and defensive, but gradually my mother started to recognize patterns in her parenting that stemmed from her own childhood experiences with favoritism. My father, typically stoic and unemotional, had a breakthrough when Dr. Lane asked him to recall specific memories of his relationship with his brother Carl versus his son Mitchell. I just did what my father did, he realized aloud during one particularly powerful session. I never questioned it. I never even saw it. Dr. Lane helped us establish new communication patterns and boundaries. I learned to voice my feelings directly rather than silently seething and then exploding. My parents learned to hear criticism without immediately becoming defensive. It wasn't easy for any of us, but it was necessary. My relationship with Mitchell evolved more slowly and with more setbacks. His financial problems had worsened, eventually forcing him and Stephanie to downsize from their lavish house to a more modest home in a less prestigious neighborhood. The facade of perfect success had crumbled completely, leaving Mitchell both humbled and resentful. I don't know who I am without being the successful one, he admitted during one of our infrequent coffee meetups. That was always my role, the achiever, the golden boy. Now what am I? Just my brother, I suggested. Just Mitchell. He hadn't known how to respond to that. Stephanie struggled the most with the family's new reality. Her social media presence, once filled with carefully curated images of their perfect life, dwindled as she grappled with their changed circumstances. She withdrew from family gatherings, making excuses about work commitments or the children's activities. The most significant changes were with my children. Emma and Liam, who had always been quiet and accommodating around their grandparents and cousins, gradually began to assert themselves more. Emma showed her grandmother her latest art projects, without the desperate need for approval she'd once had. Liam asked his grandfather to play catch with him directly rather than waiting to be noticed. Dad, Emma said one evening as I tucked her in, I don't feel sad about going to Grandma and Grandpa's anymore. That's good, sweetheart. Why is that? Because now they actually see me, she said simply. Her words nearly broke my heart with their clarity and truth. The shared family services had been selectively restored, but with clear boundaries and expectations. I maintained the main accounts, but everyone contributed their fair share. Mitchell resented this arrangement initially, but eventually recognized it was more than fair. My friendship with Alice deepened into something more. We began dating cautiously, mindful of our children's feelings and the complexities of blending families. Jackson, Alice's son, got along well with Emma and Liam, sharing their love of board games and outdoor activities. Alice's straightforward nature and emotional intelligence helped me navigate the ongoing family healing process. "You're not responsible for fixing your entire family," she reminded me, when I felt overwhelmed by the work still to be done. "You're only responsible for your part and for protecting your children." 6 months after the Christmas disaster, we held a birthday celebration for my father at my parents' house. It was the first major family gathering since the confrontation. The difference was palpable. My mother had consulted me about the menu, ensuring we included Liam's favorite dessert alongside Aiden's. My father spent time talking with each grandchild individually, showing genuine interest in their activities and thoughts. Mitchell arrived without Stephanie, who had begged off with a headache. He seemed more relaxed without her presence, playing chess with Liam as he had promised years ago and never delivered on. Aiden and Zoe, initially bratty about the less extravagant gifts and celebration, gradually relaxed into simply being kids enjoying their cousin's company. After dinner, as the kids played in the yard, my mother approached me on the deck where I stood watching them. "I need to say something." She began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been thinking about it for months, trying to find the right words." I waited, expecting perhaps another justification or qualified apology. "I am truly sorry, Grover," she said instead, her eyes meeting mine directly. "Not just for Christmas, but for a lifetime of making you feel less important, less valued than your brother. It wasn't intentional, but that doesn't make it any less real or painful for you. And I'm especially sorry for how it affected Emma and Liam." It was the first completely genuine, unqualified apology I had ever received from my mother. I felt something tight and painful that had been lodged in my chest for decades finally begin to loosen. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot." Later, my father pulled me aside for a private conversation in his study. Unlike my mother, he wasn't comfortable with direct emotional discussions, but he made his own kind of effort. "That timeshare your grandparents left you," he began awkwardly. "I never told you this, but they considered leaving it to Mitchell originally. I convinced them you would take better care of it." "You did?" I was genuinely surprised. He nodded. "I always knew you were the responsible one. I don't know. Mitchell was always louder about his needs. You never complained, so I thought you were fine." He paused, struggling. "I should have paid more attention. I should have been more fair." Coming from my father, this was the equivalent of a tearful confession. I recognized the effort it took him to admit even this much. "Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that." Mitchell and I had our own moment of connection as he prepared to leave. He helped me carry some chairs back to the garage away from everyone else. "I've been a lousy brother," he said suddenly. "You've had your moments," I agreed, not letting him off the hook too easily. He almost smiled. "Yeah, well, I'm trying to do better. With my kids, too. Stephanie thinks I'm crazy for depriving them, but I've started making them earn their privileges. Aiden actually mowed the neighbor's lawn last weekend to earn money for a game he wanted." "How'd that go?" "He complained the whole time," Mitchell admitted. "But afterward he seemed, I don't know, proud of himself. It was different from when we just buy him whatever he wants." "Growth isn't comfortable," I observed. "For any of us." He nodded thoughtfully. "I never thanked you, by the way." "For what?" "For blowing everything up at Christmas. It needed to happen. We were drowning in debt and lies and keeping up appearances. It was killing us, but we couldn't stop. It wasn't a complete transformation. Our family still had issues, still fell into old patterns, occasionally still hurt each other sometimes. But now there was awareness, a willingness to acknowledge problems rather than sweep them under the rug, a commitment to doing better. For me personally, the greatest gift was watching my children bloom in this healthier environment. Emma's artwork grew more confident and expressive. Liam's natural leadership abilities emerged as he felt safer expressing himself. They still had their struggles. The divorce still affected them. School still presented challenges, but the burden of feeling less than in their own family had lifted. My relationship with Alice continued to deepen. She attended family gatherings occasionally, her practical warmth and straightforward nature, a balancing influence. She never tried to replace Diane in the children's lives, but offered her own unique form of maternal support. We talked tentatively about the future, about possibilities, about building something lasting together. As I reflect now on that disastrous Christmas Eve that changed everything, I realize that sometimes the most painful moments can also be the most transformative. Would our family have ever confronted its dysfunctional patterns without that breaking point? Would I have found the courage to stand up for myself and my children without that raw moment of clarity? The gift-giving disaster that seemed so devastating in the moment ultimately gave us all something far more valuable than iPhones or gaming PCs, the chance for genuine connection, for healing, for a family dynamic based on mutual respect, rather than established hierarchies. It's still a work in progress. Real change doesn't happen overnight or without setbacks. But watching Emma confidently show her grandmother her latest watercolor, seeing Liam and his grandfather discussing baseball statistics, observing Mitchell's gradual evolution into a more thoughtful father, these moments confirm that our difficult journey has been worthwhile. Standing up for yourself and your children isn't selfish, it's necessary. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's an act of love for yourself and ultimately for those who need to respect those boundaries. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for a relationship is to refuse to continue its unhealthy patterns, even when that refusal causes conflict and pain. I no longer measure my worth by my family's validation. I no longer accept being treated as less than. And most importantly, I no longer allow my children to believe that they deserve anything less than full recognition of their inherent value by family or anyone else. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it and what was the outcome? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. Your story might help someone else facing a similar challenge. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories, and hit that share button if you know someone who needs to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most necessary healing.